minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our second coffee talk today. Today we are going to be hearing a presentation that is, I think, partially relevant right now. We're having a lot of people who are having a lot of extra stress, as you can imagine. So we are doing a coffee talk today called Emotional Health in a Virtual World. This is not only for virtual students, of course, because we're all living in somewhat of a virtual world right now. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Miss Julia Say. I am a 9th grade counselor. I have a few 10th graders as well. And I am going to be handing it off next to Ms. Joseph.
Hi, I'm Ms. Joseph. I'm the school behavioral health professional over in the Wolverine Wellness Center. Mr. Farley.
And I am Mr. Farley. Nice to meet you. I am the 9th grade counselor. Last name's A through L. And then Ms. Terry.
And I am Mrs. Roberto. I'm the 10th grade counselor, Alpha GO through Z. Okay, our coffee talk today is emotional health in a virtual world. We have a lot of different slides and facts for you. The first one is kind of some facts that we have from a recent survey. And this is based on students that have sought help or parents that have sought help. And some of the things that we have found is 72% witnessed a decline in the child's emotional well-being, 68% witnessed a decline in the child's behavior, and another 68% witnessed a decline in physical health due to decreased activities and exercise. Next slide. Some more facts. Teens are struggling the most with anxiety and depression, according to the survey. And also according to, when I talk to students, that's the main thing that the parents and students are reporting to us, that they are having a lot of anxiety about, digital learning, coming back on campus, just the whole desocialization. 40% in this survey reported anxiety, 37% reported depression, 30% are exhibiting problem behaviors that lead to parents seeking help as far as getting some counseling or therapy, and 23% sought help for learning challenges. Some general challenges, and this was also in some surveys, but also from talking with our teachers here and our students, some of the challenges that they are facing are technical issues, time management and distractions, especially if they're a distant learner at home, staying motivated, understanding course expectations, lack of in-person interaction, that's the whole socialization piece, adapting to unfamiliar technology. There's lots of different platforms that we're using, and depending on the teacher and the subject, you could be using many diverse platforms, not just the Google Classroom and Google Meets. Uncertainty about the future, and lack of structure for virtual students. So we're going to talk about some of the solutions that parents can do at home to help their child with the basics of really just creating a learning environment that's going to be productive and helpful. And some of the simplest things tend to be some of the, quick, easy fixes that you might not think about. And some of them are just creating a sleep-wake cycle, because, if a student is distance learning, they might not be getting up at 6:30, 6:45 anymore, because class doesn't start till 7:30. So they can easily roll out of bed at 7:25 and pop on their phone. And we are finding that just kind of helps them stay in that sleep, kind of not really up and ready to go for the day. And they're staying up later, and they're not on a continuous cycle of sleep. So that's just one important thing that you can implement. Most students, I kind of did a little survey while we were taking the PSAT. I walked around after the test was over and asked, because I had the test room with distance learners, and I just asked some of the students, what's your biggest frustration or problem with being a distant learner? And they all said distractions. Every single one in some other way said, at home, there's more distractions. So creating that space where that's their learning environment, whether it's at the kitchen table, in the office, in a space in their room that's free of distractions, maybe helping them put their phone away during class time so they're not, able to just grab it and start looking at it during class. The whole getting out of bed, it's easy to lay in bed and have your phone and join the Google Meet that way. But we're finding that students, aren't as motivated if they're not really like preparing for school as they would if they're here on campus. Another thing that's happening often is just kids aren't eating meals like they would at home, like they would at school when they're at home. So, they don't eat breakfast. They kind of roll out of bed, just turn on the meat, stay there until lunchtime. They're not getting up between the class break time of 7 minutes and moving around. So just moving around between your classes, even if you're at home, getting a daily dose of sunlight and exercise. Students were in sports and now a lot of sports aren't happening. So that's another missing piece that's creating, a problem for some students. Solution 2, having a regular check-in with your child. A lot of parents are working, right? So the student is at home kind of doing their own learning, and they really don't have anyone to talk to about what's going on for their day and how they feel about, the changes. So sometimes just making sure that you have a daily check-in time where you're asking them about, how's it going? How are you feeling? What's some challenges? And helping them to validate that those are normal and that you're feeling that too, and sharing maybe some of your challenges and helping them work through it with you. It's just, you have to provide more support, I feel now, because the socialization that they were getting with friends, maybe teachers, they don't have as much of that. So it's really like, parents have a little more work to do. I understand that. And just those simple little check-ins, just to let them know that you understand and you're feeling it with them. I think that's important. Next slide. And this is a little more on the socialization piece. So we have to get really creative now with socialization, because it's not like they can, go to their friend's house. They might not be in sports or activities anymore. Even the activities on campus are way lessened because of COVID and having to do social distancing. So students may, get into this disconnect pattern, and it's really hard for them to, know what to do. So we have to be the encouragers, and we have to come up with creative solutions for them. Do some FaceTime. There's things you can do on the internet through Zoom or Google Meets or anything like that that you would normally do together, you can kind of do on video, So if you're in a book club or you like to watch the same mini series, you can still see it together, but you're both virtual. So, encouraging that and making plans and doing fun things as a family. Some of the teachers that I interviewed during the PSAT, walking around afterwards, asking them, what would you tell parents that you see that would help kids? And a lot of them said, more family time, right? You have to do more family activities, family game night, family dinners, trying to replace that socialization within your family structure somehow, and brainstorming strategies that will help them feel less helpless and hopeless, and let them know that this is temporary, we hope. And if not, there's still fun things you can do. It's the isolation that tends to happen when we don't take these interventions, which helps, is going to lean them towards staying isolated and, causes the depression and the worry. So, try to take their mind off it by doing fun activities at home. And our solution 4 is really just setting goals, that this is what we're doing now, and we can provide goals for the future to look forward to when this is over. Holidays are coming up. You may not be able to travel to your Thanksgiving place. You may not be able to have the traditional holiday get-together. So how can we make it work and have fun and fulfill our needs and look forward to something that we're going to do later that we can't do now? What skills can we learn that could be beneficial in this situation? How can we maybe, do something different, make some plans? How can we do something to benefit others? Even the community service hours that are needed. How do you do community service when you can't do a lot of things? So there's virtual opportunities. There's things like writing letters to veterans or writing letters to a nursing home or creating cards for the holidays. So some things like that you can do as a family, and showing them that there's other ways that they can still be beneficial, they can still plan, and helping them put those plans in place. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Joseph, and she's going to talk about some of the signs of depression.
Hello, everybody. Again, I'm Ms. Joseph. I'm from our Wolverine Wellness Center, which we'll talk about a little bit further down the line. But we just wanted to talk to you today about depression and what that looks like with our students, and what that can look like at home virtually. So if you see anything with your child that might be of the unusual nature, which could be that they are experiencing more sadness, loss of interest in activities. And that can be a hard one to judge because we are in COVID days now, and a lot of the activities have been canceled. But like Ms. Roberta was just saying, there are a lot of things that we can still do online. So we want to try and get them to be more active with that. But if they don't want to do any of that, if they have some changes in their weight, that could be on the plus side or the minus side, and shifts in sleep patterns, and that again with COVID days could be a little bit of a struggle depending on the schedule changes. So a lot of our students right now who are coming to our wellness center are experiencing depression because of the antisocial nature of what this pandemic has done. And a lot of them have been explaining that they are sad and they just can't tell you why. They're just not able to put into words why that is. So we want to make sure that we're talking with our kids and asking questions if we see any of these signs at all, especially the thoughts of or an attempt at hurting themselves. That is definitely a big thing that we want to be able to get them help with. If we can go to our next slide, please. And then how do we engage our depressed child if we think that they may be? Definitely staying active, maybe taking some long walks or riding bikes, getting outside, breathing some fresh air. That is a very helpful thing. The other things that we can do is looking for things that the child had enjoyment in and trying to bring that back. I know, again, Ms. Roberto mentioned game night, or trying to get the family together to be more interactive if you notice any of these things. People experiencing depression usually will show signs. And so that's why we wanted to be able to go over some of those signs and symptoms today, so that you would be able to recognize if you feel that your child is exhibiting any depression. We want to definitely try to be more confident with them and get them to let them know that there is somebody that cares about them. Obviously, as parents, we know that you do, and we want to be able to get them help when needed. So we're going to go to our next slide with Mr. Farley.
Thank you, Ms. Joseph. Very good information, and Ms. Terry. I want to talk about a little bit with mindfulness, and basically this means to be aware. To be aware and present in the moment, without getting caught up in all of our fears, all of our stress about what happened in the past, whether it's yesterday or further along, or in the future. We worry a lot about what's to come. So a lot of kids and adults right now are worried about what's to come, right? So the biggest thing is to, no matter where you are, no matter what environment, what setting you're around, try to be at one in your environment. What does that mean? Maybe try to take a look around and notice things that you didn't always notice before, to kind of, pay more attention. So that way you can ease the stress and the thinking, because, our minds, everybody's minds, not just the kids, all of our minds are just, racing with thoughts of fear and worries, and whether it's about COVID or family member, a friend, a test, or whatever it is. And my biggest recommendation for both adults and for students, but especially for the parents, if you could, kind of work with them on, creating their safe place. Like, what is their safe place that they can focus? Like for me, just to kind of relax, me and my family, we like to take walks in a nature trail. I like to go by myself a lot of times in nature trail, and I just like to notice those certain things that I never really pay attention to. Maybe it's the birds, or whatever the case may be, the water running down the stream or whatever it may be. I love to do that. It really distresses me. I like to be present in the moment and the environment I'm in, because it really does do a good thing. Not just saying it, but scientifically, this can change your brain function and the structure of improving your memory, self-regulation, and learning. So I really stress it out that the students really need to have that moment, take a break every now and then, whether it's a 10, 15-minute break, and just go somewhere, go on a walk, be somewhere where they can focus more on their surrounding to be at peace. And we'll go on to the next slide. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of these things, some strategies that you could do. So obviously, when you're observing the world around you, right? So when you're here in the present, notice those things that you can see, you can hear, you can taste, and that you can feel, and just kind of take that in. And that's one of the strategies that really helps the brain sort through all these distractful and stressful thoughts that obviously during these times can be a lot worse. So it's always good to do that. And of course, it comes down to the basics, right? To deep breathing. So deep breathing is one of those basics that we all forget, not just the students. I mean, I myself, if I have a stressed out day, whatever, I just need to relax and take a deep breath. And it's good to practice this, take a deep breath, right? And then when you're breathing out, maybe breathe out a little bit longer than what it took for you to take that breath. So that way, when you're exhaling, you're exhaling the air. Maybe you're counting, whatever, or maybe you have some music in the background, which I recommend. Something calm, just to have something calming will calm your nervous system down, and it is proven through studies and scientific, research. So definitely want to do that. And then parents also, what's also been good is wherever your child's going through, take a moment, have them lay down, whether it's on a bench or maybe it's something comfortable, a bed or a hammock, whatever they're laying on. Have them tense up, right? Just tell them to purposely tense every muscle of their body, and then just let it go. And you could start with 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and just let them focus on that pressure, of being released, that calmingness of just relaxing. That also is going to help, and it's going to really focus more on their body and less of everything else going on, impacting them, like school or any other stressors, going on with them. And also, when it comes to just being mindfulness and just being there in the present, maybe at the moment, if you see that your student or that your child is going through a stressful moment, and maybe they're arguing back and forth with you, maybe whatever the case may be, that you just see that stress on them, maybe you just settle them down and say, hey, you know what? At this very minute, put your hand on your heart. You're stressing out. Give them at least 1 minute. Have their hand on their chest just to observe their heart rate, and just say focus on breathing and focus on getting their heart rate down, which is going to definitely release some of that stress that they're having. And the more that they do that, the more they focus on their body functions and their heart, the more they're going to be more aware whenever they are getting nervous, and they can do a self-calming regimen and just be more present in that and knowing what's going on with their own body. And also giving a hug, right? It comes down to the basics. It's like deep breathing. And that was the bell. But giving a hug, simply, if it's just to yourself, right? Giving a hug at the moment to yourself is okay. It might look weird, right? But your brain doesn't know any difference. So whenever whether you're giving yourself a hug or someone else a hug, right? It produces hormones that makes you feel better. And that's also a scientific research, a study that's been done multiple times, not just recently, but it's always been done. And it's proven that even just giving yourself a hug, right? Because your brain doesn't know whether it's whether it's yourself giving a hug or you're giving someone else a hug. And you'll see there it says COVID friendly. Yes. So we don't recommend hugging everybody. Also, research has shown that if you give 10 hugs a day, right, then that also will help out. But like I said, don't be hugging everybody right now. Hug yourself 10 times, okay? But definitely that's something that is research based. And obviously, parents, as you know, such as myself, I have a 13-year-old, and just like obviously you guys are probably going through this technology. I I really stress out to take a break from this. I know it's so easy. I can be guilty. I have a 4-year-old, right? So there's times that I'm giving my 4-year-old so I can focus on something. I'm giving him an iPad to watch for 10, 15 minutes, and I'm trying to focus. But, you know, that may calm my stress out, but there's a lot of times that many times it causes stress on them because they're constantly being stimulus, especially the younger ones, right? They're constantly having something that's being where they're stimuli of everything going around them. They're focusing on that, right? Then you try to take it away from them, and they're going crazy, acting crazy, like mine does. Maybe yours don't. I don't know. But just have your teens. You know, this is a tough year. I mean, just like what they were saying here in the presentation. You know, they're sleeping until 7:25. And like Miss Roberto said, and they're just rolling out of bed, you know, getting on there. But a lot of times they're having a difficult time getting up because they're on their technology so much, and that's going to create a lot of stress because you're not being prepared for the class. You're too focused. There's many times they're focused on the social part of it, and they're arguing back and forth with friends or on Facebook, and they're in the drama. So maybe as a family, you know, have family game nights, trying to get away from the technology. And limit. I really highly suggest limiting the amount of technology that is being around them, if possible. So the more you do that, definitely the better. And we'll go to the next slide.
Okay, hi, welcome back to me. So we're going to try it, guys. We're going to try a breathing exercise. A lot of times we read this, we're like, yeah, breathing, walk outside. Okay, fine. I'm going to make you do it. And by make you do it, I mean, if you want to do it, you can. I won't make you, but you should. So first, you're going to close your eyes. I'm not closing mine because then I won't be able to see what I'm doing. But you should close your eyes. We're going to visualize ourselves in a peaceful place where you feel calm, safe, and secure. Now that you're in your calm, safe place, we're going to try a breathing exercise. You're going to breathe in through your nose for a count of 3. You're going to breathe out slowly for a count of 4 through pursed lips, like this. Okay? I'm going to lead you. Ready? Breathe in. Hold it. And breathe out. I couldn't even help closing my eyes. That's how calming I found that. So going on to the next slide, I just wanted to try that with you guys to remind you that, look, that was like 10 seconds and I already feel my blood pressure going down. So if you do that a few times, maybe before your kids start school, or maybe that's part of your check-in. Maybe you say, all right, child, we're going to check in. First, let's do our deep breathing. It can just be a thing. The more you do it, the more it calms you down, the more you get focused on the present moment. It's a little thing, very helpful thing. Now we're going to move into some more serious stuff, but things that I think you're all going to be able to relate to. Cognitive distortions, AKA when your brain does messed up stuff and makes you think stuff that's not true. And then it messes you up. That's the teenager version of that. And also mine. So what do I mean when I say cognitive distortion? I mean that we all know how we think through situations and we usually trust ourselves. The thing is, sometimes we can't trust our thoughts because sometimes we are actually having a distorted thought and we're caught up in one of these fallacies that doesn't actually make sense, but we believe it. And then once we start reinforcing it over and over again, we start to feel like it's true. So I'm going to review these with you because one of the biggest things is even just identifying them and noticing that when you're doing it in your own thoughts. As I'm going through these, I'm going to give you some examples, and it would be really useful if you could try to think of maybe you've heard your teenager saying something that you're like, oh yeah, that's that one. Because that's a really good way to see if you're able to relate this directly to what you're hearing at home. So for example, the first one is mind reading. I'm sure you guys kind of have an idea what that means because it's kind of obvious, but it is something that happens all the time. It's when you assume that you know and understand what someone else is thinking, And typically you're sure that it reflects poorly on you. So for example, I'm talking. The person I'm talking to is, I don't think they're paying any attention to me. You know what? I'm sure they don't like me. They don't like me. That's why they're not paying attention to me. I can't believe that. Now, I'm mind reading right there, because in reality, that person might be distracted. That person might be stressed out about something completely unrelated to you. You just made it all about you because you think you can read their mind. But you can't. And it's really important to remember that you can't. And of course, these are just ways to identify this right now, but later on, I'll tell you a little more about what you can do to avoid that. All right, the next one, and this is a fun one, emotional reasoning. So you feel something because you feel it, you know it's true. No evidence, doesn't matter. You know it's true because your feelings tell you it's true. For example, I'm feeling so lonely right now, so no one likes me. I feel afraid to go in an elevator. Elevators are super dangerous. Okay, so my fear of an elevator does not make the elevator dangerous. I don't have that power. Okay, me being lonely doesn't make other people not like me, probably. Okay, so as soon as you start to identify that, you're like, wait a minute, I don't actually have control over that. Why do I think that that's how it is? So just identifying that. Another one, overgeneralization. Pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Okay, so when you're overgeneralizing, basically you're taking one negative event. So one thing that happened in a situation, just one, and then you're saying, oh, this one detail is now going to define the universal pattern of my life. So, you know, one time I did a presentation and I stumbled over my words. Now I'm telling myself I'm the worst presenter ever. I never want to present again. I cannot believe how terribly I did. And now you've blown it out of proportion. Okay, so you're overgeneralizing this one detail to make it true about everything. Now, not to be confused with the next one, which is catastrophizing, very similar, but this is the one where you take something negative and just blow it up. Okay, so like for catastrophizing, this party is going to be the worst experience ever. If I don't get a base hit, I'm going to die of embarrassment. If the teacher calls on me, I am going to lose my mind. Or I'm sure you've heard a lot of this one lately. I'm the worst. He's the worst. Everyone's the worst. I hear this all the time. Or I'm never this. I'm always this. All these absolutisms related back to catastrophizing. So making something way bigger a deal than it needs to be. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next one, all or nothing thinking. Again, pretty much what it sounds like. It can also be referred to as black and white thinking or dichotomous thinking. So in this one, you're seeing things only in two categories. Everything is this or everything is this. There are no shades of gray. And this is a very common one. And it makes you feel that if something is not all of what you want, then it's none of what you want. It also kind of tells you that you have to perform not only well, but perfectly on everything. And this is perfectionism. Otherwise, you think you've totally failed. While in reality, there's a lot of shades in between. Okay, you could do a really amazing job, you could do a terrible job, or you could do an average job, a pretty good job, a pretty decent job. There's so many levels and so many shades of gray, but when we're caught up in all or nothing thinking, we forget all about it. For example, I didn't get into my first choice of school, so my hopes for high school are dashed. I am done. Or if I didn't get that A+, I'm a failure. I should just quit school. Okay. Another one, labeling. So when you label, you put a negative label on something or on someone. It can be on you or someone else. And then you no longer see the person that's behind the label. So when you lock someone in place like that, you allow for no wiggle room to see yourself in a different way. So for example, if I fell down trying to score a goal in soccer today, I'm a horrible klutz. I don't have anything to say in that conversation. I'm totally uninteresting. So you're labeling yourself as a klutz, or you're labeling yourself as uninteresting, and now you're going to start to find details that fit that label, because that's what our brain does. We want things to make sense. We want things to go into groups. So once you put a label on yourself, your brain tries to make it all fit. So you don't want to label yourself as terrible at math or always late. Unless you really are always late every single time, which is me. So I'm the only one who can say that, but everyone else is not allowed. Okay. The next one, fortune telling. So in fortune telling, this is when you are predicting the future, which turns out you actually can't. But when you think you can, and you're predicting it to be very negative. So this can become a very pessimistic way of viewing the future. And of course, it can impact your behavior. If you think everything's going to turn out horribly, you probably are not going to try as hard, or maybe you won't set the same goals that you would if you're like, it doesn't matter anyway, everything's going to be horrible. So you can't tell the future, and you definitely can't know for sure that it's all going to be bad. So fortune telling is not very helpful. Another one, mental filter, aka selective abstraction. So for that one, it's when you only see the negative instead of seeing all the positive or the neutral aspects. So let's say you write a paper for your English teacher. They give you all this positive feedback, but then you spelled one person's name wrong. And all you can think about is this misspelling. Okay? Or you have all these positive conversations, you're having a great day with your friends, and then at the very end of the day, one person says, oh, you wore those pants today. Okay. And you're like, wait, oh my gosh, this one comment, I'm now going to question everything that happened today. None of that's valid anymore because this one person said this one thing. So, obviously that's not reality. So that's another thing that causes us to go down these paths, and then we get into anxiety, depression, and all that. So being able to identify a mental filter, very helpful. Okay, and next slide, please. We got a couple more. Actually, these are the last three. So personalization. We all do this one. We make things about us when they are not. So this includes blaming yourself for things that are not in your control and taking things personally when they were not supposed to be harmful to you. We definitely do this one a lot. I see it a lot. For example, let's see. What's a good one for that? If I hadn't demanded so much of my parents, maybe they wouldn't be divorced now. I've heard that from kids. Or that person just walked in front of me. They're so disrespectful. I can't believe people don't respect me. When in reality, maybe that person just didn't notice you, or they were distracted and it was an honest mistake. So, we try to avoid that, because when you make it all about you, you don't tend to make it positively about you. You tend to make it negatively about you. Right, and another one, we have minimizing or discounting the positive. And I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like. That's when you are taking something really nice that happened, something positive, and you're making it super minimized so that now it doesn't count as a good thing in your life or in your experiences. So it discounts any evidence that you have against the negative view. So for example, oh, I did really well on that one quiz, but I just got lucky. I'm totally terrible at math. I'm really bad at it. That quiz doesn't count. Or this one person says, I love hanging out with you. And I think, oh, she didn't mean that. She's just being nice. She says that to everybody. Okay, so you're minimizing something good happening to you. And the more and more you do this, you start to lose your ability to see the good in situations. And finally, we have imperatives. And this is another really big one. With imperatives, this is when we think in shoulds and should nots, or musts and must nots. So for example, I should be able to give presentations in class without feeling anxiety. What's wrong with me? I should be able to do this. Okay, why should you? Says who? Okay, why should? Getting rid of should is a very good first step. So when you do that, you're automatically thinking, well, now you're getting yourself more anxious, because on top of feeling nervous, now you're even more nervous because you've just told yourself, I'm not even supposed to be nervous. What's wrong with me? So not very helpful. Imperatives also reminds me a lot about, you hear a lot of absolutes from students. So I never do well in school. My parents never let me do that. I have the worst parents. Nobody ever is nice to me. I've never had any friends in lunch. And then like 2 minutes later, the student is telling me, oh yeah, I was sitting with my friend so-and-so at lunch, and then this happened. I was like, well, hold the phone. I thought you had no friends. And they're like, oh, well, I have some. I'm like, okay, so stop saying I have no friends, because every time you do that, These two receptors on the sides of your head are listening. And every time you tell yourself an absolute, you are reinforcing the idea that you are that thing and that thing is true. So the more you tell yourself something, the more you believe that. It kind of goes back to labeling a little bit too. Okay, so going to the next slide. All right, so what do we do with this? Okay, well, what can you do as parents? Well, first of all, identify these. Start looking for them. When you see yourself doing them, or you see your child doing it, or maybe even someone on TV, whatever it is, make it a game. Be like, oh, you're doing that thing again. Oh, you're labeling. Oh, you're doing this. And it's not like a shame on you kind of thing, but it's more like oh, got one. Let's identify it. Why did I do that? And how can I challenge it? Half the battle is just identifying what's happening. Okay, the goal is to recognize them. And then when you recognize them, that reduces the intensity because you're like, oh, it's just that thing. Okay, I can work through this. Like I said, recognizing them in your own patterns of thought is really useful. So for example, you might tell yourself right now, some of you, my kid has anxiety. I must be a horrible parent. What's wrong with me? What have I done? And guess what? You're not a terrible parent because your kid has anxiety. That's not logical. But reminding yourself that it's not logical is an excellent way of identifying one of these cognitive distortions and showing your child that you can challenge these negative thoughts. It's very important to notice the distortions in a way, though, that's not judgmental. So if you hear your kid like doing a labeling, don't be like, oh, you're labeling. You need to stop doing that. You are the worst, because now you've just done the same thing. Okay? And then the kid's not going to want to talk to you either. So again, it's not about saying, oh, don't do that. It's about, oh, we did this. Let's look at why. Why did I do that? And how can we challenge it? As a parent as well, be humble. Be humble about noticing your own. So when you point your own out, when you point your own cognitive distortions out, be kind of playful about it. Don't beat yourself up. Like, stupid, I'm doing it again. That's not helpful. Just be playful about it. Be like I just was kind of saying, like, oh, minimizing. Let's find a positive. Make it fun. And of course, modeling for your children that we all make mistakes and that we all make thinking mistakes. That's huge. Your kid needs to know that you struggle too, and that you sometimes don't know the answer, and that you sometimes need help, and that you sometimes don't think properly, and maybe your thoughts are a little bit screwy. We do that too. So it's important that they know that. And that way they're more comfortable talking to you about when it happens to them. And, keep the focus on clarifying and focusing. That, like I said, that's definitely the goal, is to challenge the thoughts, clarify them, and move forward. And in doing this, you're actually doing a kind of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. You'll probably hear this if you haven't already. It's very, very common in therapy all over the place. We use it in school counseling. When we do brief solution-focused counseling, we use that a lot. We try to identify these thoughts and help students realize, where they're getting stuck, and help them work through these patterns and get out of the rut. So when we are talking about some of the referrals and resources later that you can use, when you check them out, keep this in mind. Do they do CBT? Are they using that? Because that's something that you can then identify with and understand what they're talking about. Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Joseph now, and she's going to discuss some of the resources you have at your disposal. Once you've done these things at home and you're like, this is not enough, I need something else, Miss Joseph is going to give you some options.
Good afternoon again. So before I go into our community resources, I just wanted to mention our Wolverine Wellness Center. So we are available virtually or on site, depending on what your student is doing for educational purposes right now, for academics. And we have different providers. We have 2 different counselors besides myself who are available to be able to meet with our students. So one of the great options of the Wolverine Wellness Center is that it is free of charge. These services are provided to all of our students to give extra support when needed and give that extra cushion of just having somebody to speak to, Sometimes, our kids just don't want to talk to us as parents. I know I have that all the time with my child. It's when we tell them what to do and they don't listen to us, but then a stranger can come and tell them what to do and they think it's like, oh, that's the best thing I ever heard. Even though it's the same thing we've already told them. So we are here for them. All you have to do is email me. I coordinate our services in the Wellness Center, and we can get you guys started into any service that you guys need. And if you do want to go out into the community and not necessarily through school, and let me just add real quick, if your child does decide to get services through school, I just wanted to mention that it will not go into their school records at all. So whatever they may be talking about with any of us does not get recorded into their school records, doesn't go with them to college, none of that. We just indicate that that student is being provided with extra support on our campus, and that is it. There is no record of that other than just saying that we're providing a service to them. So we do have community resources up on your screen. The first one that I think is a really great resource is 211. You can call 211 any time of the day. They are a 24-hour hotline. And they're not only a hotline, they're really a helpline. So you can call and you can say, I'm having trouble paying my rent today. Can I get some services? And they will tell you all of the different agencies in our community that would support helping with rent. Same goes for food, and same goes with mental health services. So any kind of service that you might need in the community, you just ask them and they will get you at least 5 to 6 different resources of what you're asking. And another great helpline that they have is the crisis hotline. So if any of our kids are in any type of crisis, and it does not have to be a student or a child for that matter, it could be an adult, it could be one of our family members, and it could even be a neighbor. These days, a lot of people are in crisis. And so we can call that crisis hotline and be able to talk with a crisis counselor on the spot. If they need to send a mobile crisis unit because there might be something severely in a crisis going on at home, they can do that, but they can also talk to whoever it is that's going through that crisis and kind of provide resources instead of having a police situation. So it's really a great resource. And our other resource that we have on the screen right now is Legacy Behavioral Health. They also are a great resource. They provide different resources. They provide different services in our community, which could be either psychotherapy services, it could be medication management, case management, and they also offer family or individual couples counseling and all of those great things. So I know that there's a number and a link provided on our screen, and if you're watching it later, you can be able to write it down. And if we can go to our next slide, we have 2 more resources. One of them is Multilingual, and they also are a community provider. They also are co-located in our school, meaning that we do have a therapist from our wellness center who is part of Multilingual. And so they do what's called co-located. So they work for Multilingual, but they are housed in our school and are available free of charge to provide services for our students. And they do provide individual therapy, individual case management, psychological services. And what's nice about them is they also have a psychiatrist on staff. So if you feel that your child needs a little bit extra and needs to maybe see a psychiatrist, it's nice to have that all under one roof. And then finally, our other resource that we were providing with you today is Palm Beach County Youth Services. And they're another great resource to have. They are a plethora of information of all different sources that we have in the community. Again, kind of like a 211, except 211 is the hotline and helpline. Youth Services is more of a business hours type of place, but they also do individual and family counseling. And right now their individual counseling is free of charge. They are not charging for those services. They do have a big community outreach program, and they also have suggestions and places where they have contracts for residential services if you feel that your child would need that. And they also have summer camps for our youth. So if we can go to the next slide, I think we are going to talk about our virtual calming room.
Hi. Yes, and I'm sure Miss Roberto might actually want to add her own comment after I discuss this, because this virtual calming room is something provided by the Palm Beach schools. It's really cool. We have it on our 9th grade classroom. It's on the 10th grade Google Classroom, and that link there in the middle, we'll make it available to you as well. But when you go to this link, it has just really calm scenes you can watch. It has like some games you can do. Miss Roberto particularly likes to watch the animals at the zoo. Actually, could you put Miss Roberto on? I kind of want to hear her tell me about the animals at the zoo. Miss Roberto, what is it that you do with this?
There's one. I'm trying to see if I can see it right now.
This is the one where you watch the San Diego animals, right?
Yeah, when you click on it, it gives you all these different things that you can do to calm yourself. And one of them is to have, it's a live cam. So it's at San Diego Zoo and several other zoos. And it's a live cam in live time. And they show you different animals exhibits that you can watch. So you can watch the elephant exhibit, or you can watch the pandas, or you can watch the monkeys. And you can just kind of have it on another screen while you're doing something else, maybe some, quick assignment. And it's just nice to it's just a peaceful scene. And it's just another thing that you wouldn't think of, something so simple of just watching some elephants walk around. But those are the kind of little things that you can implement just to help your child get through this stressful day of being virtual, online, not having the social stuff that they would normally have on campus. It's those little things that we can do. And there's all kinds of, there's like 7 or 8 different things besides the animals, but the animals are my favorite. But there's just peaceful music, there's scenes, games. I don't know. There's like 20 different things to click on. So
thank you, Miss Roberto. I know you played with it more. I played with it a little bit, but I got stuck on the coloring.
Oh, I haven't done that one.
I really enjoyed the coloring. But and this all does also go back and relates back to everything we've said within the presentation. You could use this calming room and set up one of those scenes while you're doing your deep breathing, or maybe something on here might be useful for you while you're doing some of your mindfulness strategies. The more calming elements you have involved in the situation, more effective it's going to be for you. But all of that, you can kind of play with on your own and see what works best for you and which one makes you feel calm. So we're going to bring everybody back now, because this is most of our presentation. And at this point, I want to really thank you guys for joining us today. I know there was a lot of information, and I'm noticing that when I look on the screen, a couple of things might not be showing up exactly right. Sorry for the technical issue, but we will be sharing this presentation in the Google Classrooms as well, the PowerPoint version. And so that way you can, if you want to go back and look at some of the resources or review it, whatever it is you want to do, maybe review it with your child, you absolutely could, then you have that available to you as well. And then here's the rest of us. So if anyone has anything.
We just want to thank you all for coming, and we know you love your kids. We love your kids. Give them a hug today, and we'll just be there for them as much as we can. We're all in this together.
And it is going to be great.
Going to be great.
Thank you.
We will
Thank
get
you for
through it.
joining us.
All right, thanks, guys.
There we go.